everybody. Welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can make better decisions. And we even have a book about it, the Decision Book 50 Models for Strategic Thinking. And we have Mikhail Kogreras here talking about his book. Okay, how badly did I butcher your name?
No, it was good. I like it.
Okay, good. You're very kind. All right. So tell me why you decided to write this book.
I am an indecisive person, and I realized that I question or I have doubts about my decisions.
Hmm.
And then I realized many people have the same problem. And I started researching why is that so difficult to make decisions. And most scientists say that this is a case of personality.
Hmm.
Certain people are better at it. Some people find it easy to make decisions. Other ones ponder questions for a very long time.
Hmm.
But at the same time, you can't change your personality, but there are some tools. And I thought, what if we gather those tools into a little book that I can carry around with me? It's a small book, and look into the book if I'm in a troubled situation. And so it's really a self-help book.
So you're
I
just
wrote it.
like trying to like what should I order today? Chicken or beef? And you're like, looking at your book.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you wrote this book, and there are a whole bunch of ideas. A lot of these of which I've seen when I got my MBA, and or is this where you culled most of this stuff? It seems like it's mostly business ideas and some stuff in psychology too.
Yeah, I would say it's 50% cognitive psychology models and 50% it's from business course.
Right.
And that's because both disciplines use these models, these diagrams with an X and a Y axis. And that's sort of a universal language for
Hmm.
academia.
Yeah.
And I myself, I went to a business school and I remembered all these models, but they were all designed in order to solve business problems. And I then suddenly thought, what if we apply them to personal problems? Could they also work in a personal setting? And I found that very inspiring
Hmm.
because if you're honest, your everyday life is juggling many, many personal problems.
Right.
So why don't we have any tools for them?
Right. And tell me, you started off by saying that everyone has a different kind of personality, and some people can make decisions very quickly while others cannot. And so my son is one of those folks. Actually, I have two sons, both of who have problems. One who makes decisions quickly on certain types of things and takes forever on other types of things. I have a husband who feels like he takes a really long time to make a decision. So, what are the different personality types? You said that you know different types.
Yeah, well, scientists basically agree on that there's a two main types of decision making,
Uh-huh.
and this goes back to a very great work by a psychologist called Barry Schwartz,
Hmm.
and he called it a maximization test. And I thought maybe we should run a little test
Okay.
uh, on you and the listener. And I do a very brief version of the real test. The real test would include, I think, 17 questions or
Okay.
17 items. And
Okay.
we just now do the one question decision test.
Oh, wow. Okay, good.
So here we go. Imagine the following situation. You're at home
Hmm.
on your own. It's 6 p.m. and you decide that you want to watch a movie.
Hmm.
So you go to Netflix and you start browsing the whatever you call it directory.
Right. Uh-huh.
And now, on a scale from 1 to 10, how difficult is it for you to choose a movie? 1 meaning it only takes you 10 seconds and you've
Oh.
settled for a movie. 10 meaning next morning, 3 a.m., you still haven't chosen one.
Uh, well, I don't know. The answer to that for Netflix, I actually have a queue, so I'd probably pick for the queue, so I wouldn't be picking through a very large list. But um, for a movie that, let's say, I didn't have a queue of
Yeah.
shows, what I would do is kind of think about what mood I'm in, and then I would actually figure out, oh, maybe I want a drama, or I want a light comedy or romance, whatever. And then, frankly, I would just look at the number of stars that they would have and assume, well, okay, I'm just going to look for the highly rated shows and sort it by rank, and then read a little bio about what, the little movie summary, and then pick from there. So it's not difficult, but it's time consuming. Like it probably would take me 25 minutes to decide.
So how would you rate yourself from 1 to 10?
I don't know. I'd say I'm maybe a little bit higher than above average. So 6 or 7. 6.
Okay. Okay, good. So you're above a 5. Now, for
Right.
all the listeners, those of you who are above 5,
Yes.
um, we have a typical, how do you say, good news, bad news situation.
Okay.
Good news is that science considers you a good decision maker.
Uh huh.
You're a better decision maker than those who scored under 5. That's
Okay.
the good news.
Okay.
Bad news, however, is that even with your most or with your best decisions, you have this how do you say nagging feeling that maybe that could have been an even better
Oh
decision
yes, I
or a
definitely have that. Yes.
okay. This is this perfectionist trait, which
Yes.
in psychology is called maximization. So you try to maximize the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
which leads to a very thorough decision making process,
Mm-hmm.
but you always question yourself.
Yeah. Like I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I had done that. Oh that person did that. Maybe I should have done that. Yeah.
Exactly. And the other group, for those listeners who scored under 5, it's again good news, bad news. Bad news is that you make sometimes poor decisions because you decide too quickly.
Mm.
Or you don't think it through. But the good news is, and this is very interesting, that even with your bad decisions, you're quite happy about them because you don't question your decision making.
Huh. Okay.
And these people or this group are called satisficers.
Hmm.
So this meaning they are satisfied, but also it comes from the word suffice, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that they understand that you don't have to look for the perfect decision. You can sort of accept good enough.
Okay.
And this is already one big strategy in decision making. Ask yourself, if you're in doubt, can you accept good enough?
Hmm.
So stay away from the perfect decision because, as we all know, and maybe you as a maximizer know this very well, it's very difficult to make perfect decisions.
Yeah, there is no perfect decision. It's always, my my husband's boss said it's a 50, like basically I view decision making as a 50-50 proposition. 50% of the time you get it right and 50% of the time that you get it wrong. Whatever right and wrong even is, right? But like
Mhm.
who even can describe what right and wrong is? You only know that after the fact whether it's right. Did it increase sales? Did it not increase sales?
Right.
And there's so many
So,
variables in between. So that even that's questionable. But he said, if you're a manager, if you can just score above 50%, you're good. So instead, and he was probably under 5, this
but maybe
manager.
we should say this that there's not much science about what is a good decision because it's so hard to say. There's so many factors. And
Yeah.
with the benefit of hindsight, it's so easy to explain and things change. But the real problem of decision making is coming up with a decision. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
process that's leading up to a decision. That's where
Mm-hmm.
you procrastinate. That's where you question yourself. That's where you rush yourself maybe, and that's the big issue.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, maybe there are no perfect decisions, but
Mm-hmm.
there are hard decisions. So decisions that we have difficulties in making,
Right.
and that's where we try to focus on. Yeah.
Right. Is basically the process of coming up with like figuring out what the decision is and then making the decision. Is that what you
Right.
said is like
Exactly.
the hardest
Yeah.
part? Yeah. It's funny because I'm a career and business coach, and so I'm trying to figure out if that maps to what I hear people say. And oftentimes they're like, "So, what do you want to get coach on?" They're like, "I don't know. I'm not really sure if my job is really working, or if I should stay or not." And I was like, "Okay, so you want to work on whether you want to get a new job or stay in your current job? Is that the question?" They're like, "Oh, well," like it. So it is that process of
Yeah.
getting clarity so that they even know what specific answer that they're looking for, what outcome that they're looking for, or decision that they're trying to make. And if I were to go through that initial conversation that I have with a client, it's probably about 15 minutes of just like, oh, and I'm like, oh,
Mm.
so are you looking for a transition plan? Or I'm trying to I'm trying to like come up with the most common scenarios and I'm listening to what they're saying. But even that is hard. And
Yeah.
usually there literally is probably discrete, like 4 or 5 different choices that they're making, and it's hard for even them to come up with an answer. So I thought we could actually use a lot of the tools in the book, and to kind of string them together to show how someone would take a really meaty problem like finding a job or figuring out what should I do next, or what should I do next in my career. I often
Sure.
get those types of questions, and so I know one of the things that you have is this personal performance one, where
Yeah.
you figure out whether it's something that. Tell me a little bit about this tool and how I would use it, since I'll do an awful job explaining it. So you tell me.
Well, the personal performance model, it's the question how to recognize whether you should change your job or not.
Okay.
Because many people are maybe happy or unhappy in their job, but they have this feeling or this like idea that maybe I should change, but I don't know if it's a good idea.
Right.
So this model tries to help you to find out if you're actually happy in your job.
Mm-hmm.
And we have three different axes.
Mm-hmm.
Is
I'll
that the
show
plural
this.
of
Yeah.
axis?
So I'm
Yeah.
going to show the book, and then you can maybe explain what's on the X,
Yeah.
Y, and
So,
Z axis.
so we have to the left we have the want to axis, and that means do you like what you're doing? Do you want to do that what you're doing? And you
Mm-hmm.
can just on any random day score how much today did I want to do the things I did.
Mm-hmm.
And the person here in the book gave that a, what is it, 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
And the next question is,
And just to clarify, so there's a skill. So what you're doing is during a 3 week period, you would mark during a specific day. So let's say I started today. Today I would say,
yeah,
okay, for on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 meaning I really wanted to, 0 meaning I really didn't want to at all.
yeah,
What today? To what extent does my current task correspond to what I really want? So that would be
exactly.
the
Yeah,
axis that you're showing here as one of the axes.
yeah.
Okay.
So the next would be have to. So to what extent are my current tasks being imposed on me
Mm-hmm.
or demanded of me?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge impact because most people don't feel good if they are forced to do certain things.
Right.
So that's a huge impact.
Right.
If you every day get the idea that people tell you what to do, then you have a high score on have to.
Mm-hmm.
And you do the same thing again. How much do you score on any given day?
Right.
And then the last one, that is able to. And that's very important. To what extent do my tasks match my abilities?
Mm-hmm.
That's to the right. So the person here in the book, he scored only 4. So
Right.
you would say maybe he feels he's underperforming.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interesting because many people, if you look at burnout situations, people experience burnout if they are constantly have under the feeling of they have to overperform the whole time. But you can
Ah.
also what they then call a bore out, where
Mm-hmm.
people underperform constantly and feel like they are working under their abilities.
Ah.
So you use 3 axes, and I'll say for 3 weeks or for 1 week, you every day you fill out these 3 points,
Mm-hmm.
and then if they are constantly you see it turns into a sail. If you show the book again, you
Right.
can see it's a sail,
Right.
and you can see this is my field.
Mm-hmm.
If the shape of the sail is always the same, then you can ask yourself, okay, do I really want to do what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's moving, then your job offers variety.
Mm.
And for most people, variety is something they enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So variety means new things are happening. I can be curious. I can look into things. But if it's constantly the same, then I would suggest maybe you should ask yourself to make a change.
Right. Or actually, there's some people that I've coached that they like actually having the same thing every day. That consistency and knowing what to do every day actually makes them really happy. So in that case, they maybe wouldn't change. Like their points would probably it would they would probably be the exact opposite of that particular conclusion, depending on who you are. You know,
Of course,
I
a lot
love
of people
variety,
like
so I would be like, oh yes, I have to go if the sale doesn't change.
there are people who like routines, but I
Yeah.
would not say that routines show that everything is the same day. It just means you have certain routines that give you an anchor in your life.
Right.
In my experience, most people enjoy a certain amount of variety
Mm-hmm.
because it means you feel, how do you say, alive.
Okay, because the axes are have to, so it's there are things that I feel like,
Yeah,
okay, there's some things that I have to do. I may not want to do them, but I have to do them. I'm able to do it, meaning like sometimes I'm actually challenged, sometimes I'm under challenged, but that varies day in, day out. And
yeah.
sometimes I
You would
want to
love
do
to
it,
have,
not want to. Yeah.
yeah, you want to have one day where you get a challenge,
Yeah.
and then you do it, and then you're happy, and then you'd have 2 days where nothing is happening and you can enjoy it. So I think variety in a job, if it comes to challenges, is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're constantly challenged, you get the feeling of being burned out, or yeah,
Right. So you would actually take the your 0 to 10 scale, you would plot it on an X, Y, and Z chart, and then look to what extent every single day it's changing or not changing. And the presumption is if you see variety, it means that there's a change of pace, there's a change of you may actually have the stable work routine. That's your point, but it actually
yeah.
may be a change of pace and such. Okay. So
So your day to day.
my day to day. I there's nothing that I have to do. I mean, I'm doing this. I'm doing this show because I want to do it. I'm able to do it. Actually, matches my abilities. I don't feel. I feel like the perfect mix of maybe it's a 5. I'm. It's not as if I can just lay down and fall asleep. That's no effort, and it's not like it's stressing me out to do this interview. So it's probably a 5. Um, I have to. There's no one telling me I have to do anything, but that's just my personality because I don't like anyone telling me have to do anything. So that's a 0, or maybe a 1 out of guilt and shame because I tell myself I have to do things. So maybe that's a 1. So 5 on 1 on have to, 5 on able to, and I'd say 9 on want to.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So what does that say? That just says I guess it would say, but see, in my mind, if I look at that, I think, well, then that's someone who really likes what they're doing, wants to. Like they're doing a lot of wants to's and not as much
Yeah,
have to.
today. But if you do it over a week or 3 weeks,
Yeah.
you will see if that it maybe changes. And what people are also telling them often is that I like what I'm doing, but that's only the telling of the job. But if they honestly fill out this model, maybe a different number will show up.
Mm.
So it's something about doing this on a routinely basis of 10 to 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see how did you actually score instead of
Mm-hmm.
saying, I have a great job, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe I don't enjoy it every day.
Mm-hmm. So what when people have actually used this model in your experience, I don't know if you've had friends or you filled this out yourself. What were some of the insights that you got from doing it since I haven't done this for a 14-day,
Well, I
14
did that
period?
model when I wrote the book because I
Uh-huh.
wrote the book in a situation where I changed my job. I was working with a magazine
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to become a freelance writer, but I was afraid of becoming freelance. And I want to spend time with my kids and I want to have more time with them. So I wanted to be freelance. And that was the story I told myself. But then I actually looked at how do I feel at my job? And I started filling out this performance
Yeah.
model. And what I realized was that I am under a high pressure the whole time. I have to perform a lot. And I don't actually want it. I would
Okay.
like to do something different.
Okay.
Um, but I didn't realize it before I filled.
Ah,
And this gave me sort of an insight of what is it I'm actually doing every day,
right,
instead of saying, well, I work with a great magazine.
right, right.
So that was something that really opened my eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, so your want to was probably a low number, and your have to was a very large number. Is that what I assume? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
And yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then what was your able to, if you were, when you recall or do you remember?
Yeah, I was able to do it, but I had the feeling of that I have to give my everything in order to reach my
Right.
goals,
Ah,
which is a good thing. But I somehow it didn't match the other points,
right.
and it was constantly the same sale. So I realized over 3 weeks the situation doesn't change, and obviously I can't change it.
Right.
So
Ah,
thought,
that's a
okay, maybe
key
it's time
point
to
too. Yeah, so you look at it
push.
and go, well, I can't
Yeah,
change it. And sometimes clients can, but I think it's harder to, right? I mean, you're sometimes you have control over your situation and sometimes you don't. Like in writing, I
yeah,
presume you don't have a lot of control, right? It's a deadline driven type of business and the
yeah,
deadlines are becoming
exactly,
smaller and smaller.
exactly.
So it's like, you can't control that. Okay, so let's say that now we're going to move to a model that you call the what is it called? The morphological box and scamper. What a name. Okay, tell us about this model and how it works.
Yeah. Now this is an interesting model. It goes back to the 30s, the last century. It was invented by a Swiss engineer,
Hmm.
and it's used to actually invent, for example, new items. And
Hmm.
what it says is there are existing things that are good. So say you want to invent a new car,
Right.
then you have a list of things that you will need. Maybe an engine. You can see it here to the left. Maybe you
Yeah.
can't read it, but
Yeah. So
you
actually, you
need
have
a design.
yeah. Just so for listeners out there, so if you're actually designing a car, you would have a bunch of
Yeah,
attributes that you would need or parameters that that car would need. And so in your book, you have like the things that you're talking about: performance, design, seats, vehicle style. These are the kind of differentiating features of various cars, right? And then
yeah,
across the top, so you have a table, and so you have on the rows of the table, you have the various um, attributes of a particular product, and in the columns, you have all the different types of cars that may actually. So this is the chart
exactly.
just explaining to folks.
So they can list six different cars, existing cars, or cars you just made up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you fill in the different attributes.
Mm-hmm.
That is, so is the engine a petrol engine or a diesel, or is it a modern electric car or whatever? And then you make these small crosses at the things you like or you wish the car would have.
Ah, I see. Okay.
And out of that, you try to, um, in a way, dream up your perfect product. So, what this guy meant was that you don't have to invent a whole new thing. You can pick from things that exists and that matches your requirements and see what would that be? What would be the best outcome be if you combine from different things? And now this is how he used it back in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I say you can maybe do the same if you look at jobs.
Right.
Maybe you can make parameters and ask yourself, what do I look for in a job?
Mm-hmm.
What are the 3 to 5 really key parameters that I want to have covered in my job?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
Yeah, and I'll show you. So I did this beforehand because I was like, okay, I'm just curious how I'd use this model. So
okay, good.
just for listeners out there, so what in the book what they do is describing if you wanted to design an ideal car, what are the attributes that you'd want by looking at the different types of cars out there and and the relative attributes. In this case, we'd be taking the same exact model and applying it to our lives and figuring out, okay, how would we take a job. So I did this beforehand. Here's my
Okay.
table. Okay, so here's what I have. I have the in my rows. I have the various things that I would like in a job, which it has to be fun. I would like it to have impact. I need to have freedom or flexibility. I need to be learning something. I need to get money, and it needs to be fulfilling. And so I have all these different criteria. I maybe have too many because you said it's five.
Yeah, that's okay. That's
Okay,
okay.
okay. So I'll boil these down to the first five, and then
Yeah.
on the top I have the various things that I've either done in my life or I'm doing. Actually, I'm doing all three of these things now. So I'm doing in the
That's
one
good.
column. It's what you're calling your book a slasher, someone who has
Mhm.
multiple jobs. So on one hand, I'm doing coaching, and I have a corporate job where I'm doing corporate training, and then I'm doing this radio show. So these are the three columns that show, and then so I'm actually marking. So for coaching, I like it because it's fun because I get to connect and laugh with clients. Corporate is more serious. It's linear, not a lot of laughter. It's not a huge amount of fun, but I have fun learning. Radio is spontaneous, responsive. I love it. It's really fun. So I actually would look across all these attributes. I filled out this table, and now that I filled out this table, am I looking for, like, okay, if I were to, let's say I'm doing a fourth job on this list,
Mhm.
I would actually
Okay.
take it and say the things I love. So, like, I love that. I love the connection, one-on-one connection with coaching, and I love the kind of spontaneous nature of both radio and coaching. So these are important. So I would draw a
Mm.
little dot on these. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay. So
right.
I'd say, okay, that's important to me, and impact. In both cases, I like actually deep impact and then having one to many, and then I like one to many impact and one on one. I like both. So in this case,
Okay.
I draw the line to these two things. And then
Yes.
freedom, I like actually having creative freedom and do whatever the heck I want. So I'm going to mark radio, which is when I have my ultimate freedom. Because with clients, even you don't have freedom because you have to work with well, actually, with corporate jobs, you don't really have freedom. You have to do the directed goal. And then learning, um, uh, I actually I like the new kind of learning that I'm getting in the corporate job stuff that I'm doing because it's brand new
Okay.
and different. And then fulfillment. So I would basically, so I'll just do these four because it's going to take me longer. But
Mhm.
so what would I do with this? It's now I'm thinking now, what kind of job would I create that would have the kind of spontaneous and responsiveness of radio, will allow me to both work with people on a deep level and kind of a meant and wide level to have deep impact and
Yeah.
wide impact. And then I'd like to actually find a job that gives me a lot of creativity and autonomy. And then I'd like to learn a lot about something in corporation. So then I would be brainstorming based on that criteria?
Yeah, you can do two different things here. One is
Mm-hmm.
you can look at the jobs you're doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
because the interesting part is lower down you have money as
Mm-hmm.
an issue as well.
Right.
So if all the dots were in the same column, then
Mm-hmm.
maybe you could say I should maybe stay in the job that I have because
Right.
it's great.
Right.
So it's a good thing to find out what
Right.
is it that is great about my job.
Right. Right.
And then you can say in the last column, what is the new job you thought of? Maybe if you have a job offer or if you have something you dream about. And then you can write it there and see what of these of your key criterias are fulfilled in the new job. Because often
Ah.
we job as the perfect solution to anything, but actually it doesn't match our serious criterias.
Ah.
So this is just a structuring tool in order to make sense of our hopes and dreams and wishes and assumptions about the future and about the present.
Right.
So this Swiss guy, he was very structured, and I think its structure sometimes is good because making big decisions asks for juggling different parameters,
Mm-hmm.
and this is just like make a sense of what is it that is important to me.
Yeah, so I see that both the sale one that we did, which is am I in the right job? Am I doing what I want? Am I doing what I want? Am I able to do what I want? And or do I have to do things? And this
Mhm.
giving me a lot of information already on whether I should stay. Like maybe it's actually pretty good. I just need to, or maybe it's not. But these are kind of two tools that you could use or models that you can use to get a sense like actually my job is pretty good. So what else could it
Excellent.
be, right? Maybe there's something else that
Yeah.
I don't see in these two models, but at least you have like points of validation and more clarity on what is the problem and what is not the problem. I think from looking at these.
Exactly, and this is where you see it comes from the business world, because in the business world everything is about analysis. You don't want to make rush decisions. You don't want to make these decisions out of a certain emotion. So you really want to understand, why do I make this decision and what could be the possible outcome. And
Right.
since we can't plan the future, you can only look at the past and try to understand where we come from and how does it work. And doing this really, really rational analysis of your personal life is something we're not used to do. We
Mm-hmm.
mostly don't do it. Most people, you just expect them to just do the right thing.
Right.
And this is a little bit unfair because it's very hard to sort of make diligent analysis of your own skills or of your own history.
Right.
And this is what these models try to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting about these models is that you can come up with them. I think that the breakthrough thing is thinking, okay, well, wait a second. How can I have all of these things together to create an entirely new job that I hadn't even thought about before? Much like, well, maybe
Yeah.
like if I have the parameters of what I want that new job to look like. So you gave two examples. One is like, am I in the right job? If everything's in the right column and saying it all lines up, then maybe you should stay in the job. Or secondly, I have the criteria for the job. Where in my mind, when I look at it and I think about creatively thinking about new jobs that I may not even thought about, I could look at this criteria and go like, okay, how do I get a job that is like corporation that has that has that corporate feel, working with that particular audience, but gives me creative freedom and autonomy, and has deep work and then also wide work, and it's once I know the criteria, I can actually come up with some new ideas of jobs that I hadn't even thought about. So I like
Yeah.
that aspect of this too, is the kind of creative brainstorming too. Okay, so now, and this is very much what I take clients through. And what I like about this is that it's something that a client could do on their own if they didn't have a coach and
Yeah.
they didn't, or they wanted to do kind of a do-it-yourself model and they didn't want to, they didn't like a coach, don't want a coach, or whatever. So then once clients go through this, and I have them come up with the same thing, a criteria, and going back to the thing that you mentioned, what I've noticed is, especially like most of my clients or like corporate doctors, lawyers, people in the business world, a lot of people in the IT tech world. And so if I can't convince their conscious mind using these rational models,
Yeah.
they're not making any decision because their minds are
Uh-huh.
trained in that particular way. So because your occupation is more in writing and more creative, maybe
Yeah.
more spontaneous, um, if I start off, in fact, there's an exercise that I do that's a very kind of feeling, emoting kind of exercise. And if I start off at the wrong time, if I start off working with clients and start off with that without starting with these rational models, I lose
Mhm.
rapport with them because they,
Oh, really?
yeah, their rational mind needs to be convinced
Yeah.
with these kinds of models
Mhm.
first before they will
Yeah.
go. They have to trust me enough to go like, okay, now how do you feel? Like if like if I go in that direction too
Yeah.
quickly, they just, and again, I'm like, what does your heart tell you? If I go in that direction too quickly, I and I don't have enough trust built up with these kinds of tools,
Yeah.
they're gone. Um,
Now, these tools, of course, they speak these languages fluently. It's a
yeah,
language. I think analysis tools, especially the X and Y model, that's a language that most people, or not most, but many people in the management world, they know that language by heart.
yeah.
And that gives them a lot of security, of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that this coach isn't a flake. She's taking me down paths that make logical sense. Okay, so
Yeah.
then let's say that the person is identified. I reach a point where I'll have a set of criteria, and then I'll say, what are some like
Mhm.
7 different jobs that would meet this criteria? And they come up with 7 different jobs, and some of which are
Mhm.
super scary. Like, I want to become a
Mhm.
writer. I was a
Mhm.
lawyer and I want to become a writer, which they're writing, but
Okay.
like they're putting themselves out there in a creative way, and that's kind of scary to them. Um, or at the time when you were writing in a magazine, a prestigious magazine, then it's all of a sudden freelancing kind of feels scary. And so people reach that point where they have many possible roads to take, and you have a model in your book calling the crossroads model. Tell us a little bit about that model.
Yes, the Crossroads model, it actually is inspired by the personal compass developed by a consulting agency called The Grove in San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco, which I think does a really, really good job at this.
Mm-hmm.
And this Crossroads model say that when you come to a crossroad in your life, and now we're talking about not not small decisions,
Yeah.
not do I want to buy this car or that car, because that can be a tough decision because it costs a lot of money. But in 100 years, who's going to care?
Right.
But if you say a crossroad is something like, should I start a family or
Right.
should I move abroad or should I really change my career?
Right.
This has consequences for my life and also for the lives of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So these are crossroad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the idea is that you ask yourself big, deep questions. And these are 5 questions. One is the question, where have you come from?
Mm-hmm.
So in order to understand if you should make a change, you should really assess where do I come from? What were the steps that led me to where I am right now. Because most people who are maybe unhappy in a situation, it's nothing that happened overnight. There
Mm-hmm.
was a path leading to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And you should like try to just with stick words write down what is it, how did I end up where I am now? What were the decisions I took
Right.
5, 10 years ago that led me to where I am now?
Right.
So in your case, why do you
Yeah,
work
so
with radio?
I started in finance. I wanted to do something more creative, so I was actually in finance for about 5 years, and then I switched over to marketing for 15 years and working in high tech, and it was very intense. And it, like yourself, when you were working in that magazine, I just could not raise a family and also work in that environment. So then I moved to do something that was more flexible. I did coaching and the radio show, and now my husband and I in 2 years from now are going to be empty nesters. So now I'm
Oh,
actually going to a different stage where I actually don't have to do a whole bunch of things with the kids. It's going to be just my husband and I can actually take on some new work. So what's next? I'm on V3 of my life, I think.
yeah, okay. So you that's your background. That's an
Yeah.
important background. You have like so we can see where you come from, and you
Yes.
have this empty nester situation, which
Yes.
really changes a lot.
Right.
Now, the next question would be, what is really important to you?
Okay.
And here I always ask people to just, from the top of your head, just name 3 things that are really, really important to you.
Right. For me, it would be family. It'd be my spiritual practice, and it would be giving back, doing something with meaning and giving back that's impactful.
Okay, wow, that's beautiful answers.
Thanks.
Because you see now, family, that means I think that you have people that you care about, and there are people who love you, which
Mm-hmm.
is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Many people don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it means that you are not on your own, right?
Right.
So you maybe have to care for other people. Um, the spiritual way means that you have meaning in your life, which is something that maybe would be more important than a career. Many people would say at this point, family, money, career, or
Right.
health.
Right. Oh, I see.
And
Okay.
but you
Okay.
chose 2 things, the giving back and the spiritual way, which are truly meaningful. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously, having a meaning in your life seems to be more important to you than having a career or making a lot of money.
Right.
And this is, I think, this is a very interesting moment when you can easily say, my principles are not, uh, or just to say, what are my principles?
Right. They're not
And I,
financially driven or
yeah, for
ego
example,
driven or whatever. Yeah.
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 So these are your principles. And next, the next question would be, which people are important to you?
Yeah, and it'd be my family, and I have a dear set of friends. So yeah, I probably have about 6 or 7 very close friends, and then my
Mhm.
husband, who I'm very close to, and then we have a really good relationship, and then my 2 boys. So those would be the
Okay.
people who I care are most important to me.
So the question here leads to, if you make a big decision, this decision will influence the people that are important to you, or maybe they will influence your decision. And it's
Right.
important to know that because we sometimes pretend that we're an island, or I don't know, we're just
Right.
on our own in this
Oh yeah, where
world,
we
which
make a
is,
decision that hurts our wife or husband or kids.
yeah,
Like we haven't thought through, like, well, what impact is that going to have on your family? What's your husband going to
exactly.
think?
Maybe
Yeah.
we make decisions based on the ideas that we have about our kids.
Right.
So I want to move to that city, even if I don't like it, but it would be good for the kids.
Right.
So we make decisions that are for other people or by other people. And this is important to keep in mind when you stand at the crossroads. Who am I with and who is influencing my decision?
Mm-hmm.
Then the fourth question is, what is it hindering you?
Yes,
Hindering?
hindering
Yeah.
you. Yes.
What is hindering you? So if you want to make a decision and you know what you want to do, why haven't you done it yet?
Right. Yeah. So for me, it's just the fear of the unknown. I don't want to make any big decisions now without knowing exactly, because I still have a younger son who's still with me. So I don't
Okay.
want to make any huge decisions. I just want to make small changes, not gigantic
Mhm.
changes, because I don't know if I make a gigantic change, it may rock the boat too much and I won't be able to meet my family obligations. So that would
Mhm.
be what's hindering me. So it's kind of the fear of the unknown and not wanting to uh, create disequilibrium where there's actually really good balance and equilibrium now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's always a good to find out with people because um, I don't know the numbers, but I think many decisions are based on fear. So we do certain things, we take certain actions because we want to prevent things or we are afraid of things to happen. And it's nothing bad about that. It's just you need to know what are you afraid of, what keeps you from doing certain things.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up question would be, do you want to overcome that?
Yeah.
Or as in your case, maybe not. Maybe you
Yeah.
should not change because you know that you don't want to
Yeah, like the
jeopardize the kid.
when I talk to clients, the typical thing that they say at this point and what stops you is like I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to make enough money for to feed my family.
Right.
Or like they go into apocalyptic. I'm going to be on the street homeless. If I actually go down this path, that I do what I really want to do, is I actually won't make a
Mhm.
much enough money, and then I'll put my family in a ruinous place or I may damage my reputation. It's always about
Mhm.
money,
Right.
reputation. I'm trying to think of other common things. Those are typical hindrances, or I just don't feel like I can, or I don't know if I'm confident enough. So some of them are
Mhm.
confidence based, but they kind of fall into those, I guess, three
Yeah.
broad categories when I ask them.
So the hindering question leads us directly, where to touch it, to the last question, which is, what are you afraid of?
Hmm.
And you just mentioned many things that you're afraid of, or that people are afraid of. Like
Hmm.
it's the things or the people that cause you worry or that rob your strength.
Right.
And that's something. If you're really honest about that, you can go very deep with people.
Hmm.
Because if you really talk about what am I afraid of, why don't I write articles that I really love?
Hmm.
Why do I try to write articles that appeal to other people?
Hmm.
And that's a moment. If you really talk about that, you get pretty far in the decision-making process
Mm.
because then at the end you realize I make decisions because I want to overcome that fear, or maybe because I don't want to meet the fear.
Right.
And that I think that's where the big decisions lie. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oftentimes people just haven't researched it. Like, I'm afraid I'm not going to make enough money. Well, have you researched how much money you have to make in order to make ends meet? No. Well, maybe you need to figure that out because you're afraid that you're not going to make enough
Yeah.
money in this other
Yeah.
job. Do you even know what that other job pays? No. Well, okay, we'll get some information so that the unknowns become known, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so you do all
Exactly.
this analysis and then I just found this graphic somehow really powerful. So this is a
Yeah.
graphic that you have, and so it's the there's the questions that you ask.
Mm.
What are you afraid of? Which people are really important to you? This is not in the order that we talked about. What's really important to
Yeah.
you? Where do you want to? Where do you come from? What is hindering? So it's like your past, your aspirations, your blocks, and then there's actually six different roads that you show or paths
Yeah.
that you can take. Now that you've done kind of the base analysis of yourself, you have these six different paths that you can take. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, it could be six or five or three, but
Right.
the roads that lay ahead of you, and I will just name some of them, is one is the road you always wanted to try. I think we all have these dreams or ideas that we always wanted to try, and as the older we get, we sort of say about these dreams, well, I was young back then, or
Right.
I was naive. But there is something inside you that still dreams about that, and it's good to write down or say out loud what was my dream and is it still my dream maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and that's sort of the ultimate wildest path that there is.
Mm-hmm.
Then there can be a road that seems how do you say most sensible to me, so
Right.
the one that people whose opinion I value would recommend to me,
Right.
because many people, if they're indecisive, they turn to other people and ask for advice,
Right.
and these people will not tell you something. Sometimes they tell you something they think about themselves, but they
Right.
always will give you a good advice.
Right.
So this is often a very rationally good advice.
Right.
It doesn't mean you want to do it, but you need to know what would be
But
like
the
the right.
sensible road, yeah, the sensible
Yeah,
road to
exactly.
take.
Exactly. Then we have the road not traveled. which means a road that you don't know anything about because you have never considered it before.
Hmm.
And this is interesting because often people who want to change something, they don't know what they want to change to.
Hmm.
So here you can just list things you never thought of.
Right.
So in your case, I don't know, what are three kind of jobs you never thought of doing, but you could do?
Well, you know what actually what came to me when I did this, as I said to my husband, I'm like, "Honey, I have a new idea about V3 of our life." And I said, "You know what? I realized that what we could never do because we have kids is we could never like go to an ashram and live for 6 months because
Oh,
that you can't do that. Like you have responsibilities at home. You can't do that kind of
yeah.
stuff." And I thought, I would love to do that, like, or just travel for like a whole year. Like, we could do that
Mhm.
that we can't do right now with kids. And so, those kind of things that I just never
Yeah.
even thought about doing, it's literally the road not traveled.
Yeah.
But those are the kinds of things that popped up that I would never have even contemplated before. But it's almost, it's like you've taken the sensible road and the familiar road so many times that you don't even see that there's this other road that is possible when the
Yeah. And then
constraints
the
get
question, of course,
removed.
is it really impossible?
Yeah,
Like,
it's not, it's
maybe you
totally
can take it.
possible for
Maybe
me.
you can take it to the ashram. I don't know. I mean, there are so many, like we put up limits ourselves. It's not like there are limits all the time.
Yeah,
Then we
absolutely.
have then we have the road, we call it the road I have already been down.
Hmm.
And that is important because if people change their life, we often change into things we already know.
Hmm.
So we're looking for things we've already experienced. We try to re-experience things. We try to take a safe road, basically, because we've already been there. And this is when we sometimes, it can be a good thing, absolutely. But it can also be sort of a vicious circle that you keep repeating your own mistakes because you feel quite safe in your mistakes because you already know them.
Right,
And this
right,
happens a lot.
right. Yeah. My I have a client, and his sensible road is he does IT work for cloud computing here, and one of the big
Okay.
companies here. So he makes a lot of money. He's very senior. He could work in Amazon, Microsoft. There's all sorts of different places if he wanted to continue. So that's the sensible road where he could make a lot of
Mm-hmm.
money, continue doing what he's developed expertise in, and then there's the dream road, which is I've always wanted to do something in music and technology, but I don't know if it's possible to make money in there. And then there's a road less traveled where we literally took all of this criteria that he came up with. And
Okay.
I said, well, actually, when you look at your criteria, you can be an emergency preparedness. And he's like, oh my God, you're right. Like it was just something that he didn't
Yeah.
even think about before. But when he looked at all his life experiences and the things that really brought him joy, it was doing things with using all his technical skills to jump in the middle of a crisis and help people out and plan during those times
Mhm.
of crises, which you would never have thought. So it was kind of, um, uh, I guess, the road not traveled. But I'm just using this so
Yeah.
people get an example
Yeah.
of like what these things may
Absolutely.
look like in real
Yeah.
life. How about you?
So I think,
Yeah. So
sorry.
what happened
So,
when
so
you
I
did
think,
this? Yeah.
yeah, to me it was something that I loved writing, but I realized maybe I was when I was in high school I was in a theater class,
Yeah.
and I always loved that, but I wasn't good enough.
Mm,
But I loved it, and then I just doing this assessment, I realized maybe I loved something that I'm not good at.
right.
And this really brings up big questions because
Mm,
that would actually mean, okay, less salary, less success, and many other things. I didn't follow that path, but I just realized there are parts in my life that I don't look into because I wouldn't be successful. I wouldn't.
yeah, you'd
It
have to
wouldn't meet certain.
restart. Yeah, you'd have to start your
Yeah,
career from the bottom up in theater, and that would take a long time, right? And you have a family,
exactly.
so
Yeah,
yeah, maybe
and
not be able to
and
do.
certain things, and that
Yeah,
is something that I think we do too seldom because we're stuck in the system that says I have to do this, I have to meet these criteria,
yeah,
and this model just tries to play around a little with saying maybe there are much more roads in your life than you can imagine.
right. Yeah, or that there's actually roads that you can create that you didn't even think about creating. So, like, if I have a lot of people who have a very similar situation as yours, a lawyer who makes like, I don't know, he's like $700 an hour that he charges, and he wants to be a writer, and because that was
Hmm.
his dream, I'm like, well, you're going to have to figure a way to phase into it. And so what he did is he created a transition job to actually phase in so that could build the skill so that when he was ready, when his kids were leaving and he was an empty nester, he would have a transition job. So he's working on the board of this group that did writing, and then he was like transitioning
Okay.
to doing more writing on the side. And so that he got back into, because he was actually a journalist for a long time, and so he got back into that. But it's like a bridging job that you can actually take. So, like, if using your example, if you did theater, you could actually do a job where you're doing kind of theater for your kid. Let's say your kids in school and you're doing some kind of theater things. You create the like theater design and stuff for their play, and you're like, actually, I like this and I know what I'm doing. Then you do more and more of that stuff. So there's ways, like, even when it feels like, oh well, forget about it, there are ways to add those things that you love back into your life, because maybe right now you can't do that because you can't afford to do it, but doesn't mean that you can't do it forever, especially when kids
Yeah,
you become empty nesters. Then you can actually try doing these things, and if you build skills
absolutely.
throughout the time, you can be able to do that. So this has been fantastic. We actually touched upon only three tools. I actually have two more tools that we didn't have enough time to talk about, but I mean, this gives you a sense of how these tools, and I'd filled this out, so we were we were able to only touch on the surface of a lot of these things, but hopefully people got a sense of how to use these tools in a practical way, and how these tools can be combined, these models can be combined to actually help solve problems, which you know already because you wrote the book and used this. So
Right.
any closing words for people before we wrap it up?
I think I just want to present my favorite model, which is very easy,
Okay.
which I call the rubber band model.
Uh-huh.
And this is basically if you're standing in a dilemma where you have to choose between two things,
Mm-hmm.
what we usually or intuitively do is that we say, what are the pros and the cons?
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up with pros and cons, and it's both have pros
Mm-hmm.
and cons, because if
Mm-hmm.
it would be clearly one has more pros, then you would just choose that.
Right.
So, and this is a method a teacher at my university told me, and he said you should imagine it like a rubber band. And you should ask yourself not what is better, but what is pulling you and what is holding me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
these are the questions. It's
Mm-hmm.
not what is better or what would be worse, but what is pulling me away from a person, from a place, from a job, and what is holding me back. And
Mm-hmm.
if you ask these two questions, you realize you don't weigh them against each other. You just again get an idea of what is it that wants me away and what is it that wants to stay to keep me back.
Yeah.
And these are two very powerful questions.
Yeah, I think it's you're being conscious of what you're not necessarily even had taken the time to be introspective and understand. And I think that it's insight, right? Which you don't have without a model like
Yeah,
that. So,
exactly.
the decision book, 50 models of strategic thinking. And I paused because I'm like, oh gosh, I have to say his name again. Miguel
You say my
Krogers.
first name.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It was great to be on your show.
Yeah.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.